LinkedIn presents.
Welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast. We're your source for personal, professional, and organizational growth and development, where we share original research, explore industry trends, and interview executives and thought leaders from across the globe. We hope you join us often for practitioner-oriented content around all things related to leadership, HR, talent management, organizational development, and change management. Maximize your personal and organizational potential with Human Capital Innovations Podcast. Do you enjoy the Human Capital Innovations Podcast? Enjoy ad-free listening by going to the Patreon page, and please consider contributing even at the producer or sponsorship level. And please leave a review. Thank you for your support. Welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast. In this HCI Podcast episode, I talk with Clint Van Marrewijk about the critical importance of proactive employee risk management. Clint Van Marrewijk, welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast.
Hey, how you doing, John?
It is a pleasure to be with you. You're joining us from Texas. I'm south of Salt Lake City in Utah. And today we're going to be talking about the critical importance of proactive employee risk management, generally speaking, but also specifically in relation to COVID risk and making sure we have safe places to work for our people. As we get started, I wanted to share Clint's bio with everyone. Clint is the CEO and co-founder of SaferMe. He is a serial entrepreneur that specializes in startup businesses that tackle new and difficult safety problems. Now he's championing SaferMe's mission to help businesses, schools, and government entities keep their people safe by utilizing new contact tracing technologies. SaferMe is used in more than 60 countries around the world, and its clients include Fortune 500 companies, government agencies, and many high-profile brands. Again, Clint, a pleasure to have you. Anything else you would like to share with me or my audience by way of your background or personal context before we dive on into the conversation?
Oh, no, not particularly. I mean, I was just about to call you mate, but John is the John is the way that we're meant to say it. You hear from my accent and lingo, I guess, the things that I say. But I'm from New Zealand, down from the deep south, but currently in Austin, Texas. So we obviously started many years ago, but during the COVID pandemic, supplied the New Zealand government, and then subsequent to that, a lot of different companies in the US, and subsequent to that, a lot of companies that are being prepared for what's coming next. So that's what we do, and if that's of interest to you, happy to dig in and share some of those learnings.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you, Clint. And this is something everyone's been dealing with for a long time. And of course, contact tracing is an important piece of all of this, and having a safe workplace environment and dealing with employee risk around the pandemic. But there are so many different aspects of risk that organizations are facing all the time. And so having a general proactive mindset around employee risk management is super important. So we're going to dive in and unpack all of that together. So why don't you start by just telling us a little bit more about SaferMe, a little bit about the history and background of SaferMe. You just provided a little bit of a teaser, but a little bit more, and then we can dive into the contact tracing elements and some of what you're doing today around proactive employee risk management.
Yeah, so SaferMe specializes in predictive safety. So that by nature forces us to be at the edge of what's possible. And we've been doing that for a long time, since 2015, which is going back away now. So that means we've always been focused on where someone is relative to risk, and whether they're approaching risk or about to do something dangerous. And it just so happened that we'd already built a lot of the key technology required for the proximity of people to risk. And during the pandemic itself, it was actually the proximity of people to people that became a risk. So that is part of what we do, and we're happy to talk about what large companies in particular are doing with regard to pandemic readiness, because that's really what's a focus for a lot of BCP, business continuity planning teams, and that has a whole little subspeciality in its own right, primarily around how to respond fast enough. So if the next thing comes, the next pandemic arrives, how is it that you actually respond with speed this time? Because although everyone had an excuse last time, a lot of businesses are thinking, okay, we can't get caught with our pants down a second time around. So that means being ready, and how do you go about being ready? So there's a whole piece of work around that. But SaferMe itself has actually always been around predictive safety, and we've got a number of tools in that space as well as safety management software generally, which is the core underlying.
Yeah, thank you. And the reality is, I mean, now we're getting to the point where I guess the terminology is we've moved from pandemic to endemic. So it's something we're still concerned about. We certainly got caught with our pants down the last time around. The reality is, even if perhaps we're out of the scariest times of the COVID pandemic, there will be others like this. It's just the way the world is now. Like, and we had others before COVID that fortunately didn't spread as much, but there will be other similar types of risks in the future. And hopefully we learned some really important lessons from these last few years so that we're better, capable to meet the challenges that might come. So what have you found from the organizations you've worked with, those that were really well prepared, those that weren't so well prepared? What lessons are learned, so that we can make a difference moving into the future the next time we get hit with, some major crisis, a pandemic, or whatever the case may be?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting having supplied so many companies, you get to see which ones respond best, and there tends to be a pattern that the best responding businesses will typically have a multidisciplinary team involved in that response. And what that means is not just having the HR department, not just the safety department. It's not just the execs trying to solve these things and push down solutions. It's really bringing people who are actually on the ground doing the work, and your IT team, your HR team. So a multidisciplinary team that knows how to implement quickly. And if that's not there, it's very difficult for a large business to respond in the speed that's required. So I guess that's the first thing. And amongst the BCP challenges, pandemic readiness has a few unique aspects. And what we're seeing now is a trend towards pandemic readiness, which is, okay, people are taking a breath and thinking, right, now this is for our business, perhaps this is a slightly lower risk. Now we can reassess what it is we're going to do right next time. What have we really learned? So there's been a little bit of breathing space, especially now coming into summer. So what being pandemic prepared means is typically you want to have your vendors pre-approved. So a unique problem with responding to a pandemic is just how quickly you have to gear up. And if you're a very large company, even mid-size, so anything over around 4,000 staff, roughly, above that size, they typically can't respond faster than 30 days. So you really have to have your vendors pre-approved. So that means your IT team and security teams already reviewed them. You pre-trained a few of your key people on how to use these things, how to roll it out, how to communicate about what they are, and a bunch of other things besides. So just being ready to go is quite important. And the larger the company, the more important that becomes, because the impact of a pandemic is actually larger, and the ability to respond it's actually much more difficult for the large companies. That's one thing. And then I guess also rating the risk for your industry, so that the businesses that really care about these being extremely well prepared typically food preparation, manufacturing, mining, construction, critical logistics. These are the industries where you must be together to do your job. And if going down, or a whole set of factories going down for a set period of time is disastrous, for example. So it's also being realistic. So some businesses can work from home and can easily pull that lever, but not everyone's in that basket, and not all aspects of every business is in that basket. So yeah, it's just a few things to think about.
Yeah, excellent. And it does actually lead to, the current debates around in-person, face-to-face work versus remote or hybrid. My hope is after the last 3 years that most organizations would have at least wrestled with those topics enough to be ready to pivot a little bit faster, a little bit more. I mean, everyone had to pivot. They had no choice the last time around because of lockdowns and restrictions and everything. But hopefully now, organizations have worked through some of that. They're going to be in a better position to respond quickly in a more effective way if those types of situations arise again, which they probably will at some point. But like you said, not every organization or not every part of every organization can go fully remote. And so let's not forget the lessons we've learned through all the hard work that happened over the last couple of years of how to respond to those types of situations, so that we hopefully can do it even better the next time and provide a better experience for employees who are dealing with a lot of stuff, a lot of stress, as the world, is revolving around them with a lot of turmoil. Maybe you can tell us a little bit more specifically around the contact tracing technologies that were utilized with SaferMe, and what those and your platform and software, what it'll allow organizations to do moving into the future as new threats arise.
Yes. So for a business, a really high quality contact tracing solution is all about work continuation. So it's around having better data so that you can make smarter decisions. And that's essentially what SaferMe was all about, delivering during the major waves of the COVID pandemic, and then preparing companies to be ready for the next one. Now, when it comes to the solution itself, it's essentially a small credit card sized Bluetooth enabled device that anonymously stores data on it, and nothing is transferred from that card until the button is pushed by the person wearing it. So each employee just wears a badge as normal, and then if there is a pandemic or an event and data is needed on, okay, who is at risk in our company, the person who's sick generally will push their own button in order to try and make the right people aware inside the business and keep their other employees safe, the other people they work with, and share that information with their HR team. So what happens now in most organizations that aren't using high quality technology is they'll literally call someone up while they're at home, going through a whole lot of strain and stress, being sick, and try to ask them, okay, who have you been near? How bad is our exposure? And that's just not right. So
well, I was going to ask about that.
Button, you can share the information and get to the bottom of things much, much faster. And instead of, shutting down a whole site or 20 or 30 people having to go home, it might only be 4 or 5 people that have to take a few extra precautions for a couple of extra days, do a round of testing. Okay, great. Everyone else can just carry on working and feeling confident that really professional systems are in place. So that's essentially what the product does.
Yeah, well, that's really cool. And I can really base off of my experience and the experience of my family. We saw a whole variety of ways that organizations have approached this in the past, and hopefully they'll approach it even better in the future. I'm a university professor is my day job. And so we had all sorts of protocols in place at the university, and they had a contact tracing team put in place that essentially did like you just described. So there was no technology utilized. It was fine, I guess, but not great. I had, 3 daughters who were working, and some of them worked in places that seemed to almost give no attention to this, which shocked me. But I had one daughter who worked at a company called In and Out that you may be familiar with. And they were very, very proactive. they primarily did the phone contact tracing, but they were very thorough, far more thorough than any other organization that I personally experienced. And so I appreciated that for my daughter's health, for my family's health. But I can only imagine the amount of time, manpower that went into the phone calls and just tracking everything manually the way it seems like they did. I'm sure they used some sort of software, but largely it seemed like it was phone calls. And that just seems onerous and really challenging. And it's no wonder why many organizations didn't do a very good job with the contact tracing.
Yeah, it's actually not, it's not easy to do well if you're doing it manually. And the larger your employee base, obviously the more difficult it gets, because you're dealing with the permutations of contact between people. And then it just takes a few meetings that you've forgotten. And what's the point in calling someone and asking all these questions, and then they forget 5 or 6 people that were actually key contacts. So if you've got accurate data, as I say, you can make really accurate, fast decisions. And a lot of the time it significantly reduces cost for the company, because you're not having to spend all the time interviewing, and you're actually getting accurate results about who is or is not at risk. And usually it's less people at risk if you've got better data, and therefore more people can continue working, feeling like they're being looked after properly. So that's what technology makes available. And I guess another key thing for business people to know is just that it's possible. Contact tracing as a term is not didn't do well in the public sphere, especially in the government state level. And that's mainly because the data is even harder to gather and harder to engage with your population. Whereas inside a business, people expect to be kept safe. They expect that it's a duty of care that your company has to you as an employee to look after you. And you yourself as an employee also want to keep people you work with safe as well. So there's a lot of that. It's really quite possible to do a great job inside a business context if you also assist with technology. That's something obviously that we pioneered and developed and have rolled out at SaferMe all across the world, starting in New Zealand, but very quickly into many, or I think it's over 40 different countries around the world. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and certainly it seemed like New Zealand was kind of the poster child for good, effective response to the pandemic and dealing with it in a healthy way and keeping people safe and healthy. So it's no wonder that all of this emerged from that context, and that you've been able to help a lot of different places. As we move towards wrapping up, I thought maybe you could share with us your thoughts and insights, because I'm sure that you're tracking this space all the time about what new threats could be out there, et cetera, how companies can respond to them. What do you see as like the biggest things companies should be preparing for, say, in the next couple of years?
What do they say? Predictions about the future are difficult, or there's some sort of Yogi Berra saying that everyone throws around. I think there are a few practical lessons here. One is the obvious one, is to be prepared for a longer duration than 2 years. So thinking about a 10 or 20-year duration is smart if you're a large company. I think there's also some lessons around the openness and transparency of communication generally inside companies. So being able to share the plan that you have for what's coming with your employees, and also to share with them what you do and do not know about what's out there. So it's not wrong to say we don't know what's coming, but these are the steps that we're taking to be prepared. And having those sort of honest conversations allows you to also be realistic when threat levels are raised, and you can again communicate openly and honestly that we don't necessarily know how bad this next threat's going to be, say a monkeypox or whatever else comes through. However, these are the steps we're taking to address that. And I think trying to be too sure about what it is that's happening is a recipe, I'm not going to say for disaster, but it undermines trust. And it's better to sometimes say that you don't necessarily know what's going to happen, but these, as I say, these are the steps we're taking to be prepared. So obviously, as a pandemic readiness company and a predictive safety business, we're going to say it's a good idea to be prepared. But then again, the lessons in communication is also equally as important.
Yeah, the reality is we don't have a crystal ball. We don't know exactly what's going to come or how it's going to show up. But what we do know, I mean, that something will happen
sooner or later. Yeah.
Things do happen. And I mean, we would have to be like the luckiest. Everything, the stars would have to align. We'd have to be so lucky to not experience this again. It's just the world we're in. We're so interconnected. There's so much opportunity for these types of events to arise. And so we just need to, there hopefully more and more safety measures put in place at the government level and, try to protect people, et cetera. But the reality is, this we're going to have to deal with this again. So making sure that we're being as proactive as possible, that we have the technological tools to assist us if and when, this arises again, and that we have as a team thought through these issues so that we're not caught flat-footed. We're not going to know exactly what's going to happen or how we're going to respond, but at least we can have some general idea of like how we would approach different scenarios, which will be really important. And something you said earlier, which I think is really, really vital, is the idea of having interdisciplinary teams of people trying to talk through these things and being proactive around employee risk within their organizations. Because in so many places, it really is just the HR team or the risk person or the risk team or the legal counsel, or, do you actually have the input from various areas to come up with good solutions, good approaches that are both humane and will help the business to protect itself and to keep the doors open, so to speak, and continue to provide the products and services in the economy? And unless we can have, a more interdisciplinary approach and get out of our silos more and faster, I think we're going to find ourselves in these types of situations again, where so many organizations found themselves flat-footed last time. Well, Clint, this has been a real pleasure. I note the time. I need to let you go here in just a minute, but before we wrap things up, I wanted to give you a chance to share with the audience how they can connect with you, find out more about your work, your team, and then give us a final word on the topic for today.
Oh, great. Yes. So if you want to find out more about SaferMe, it's easy. You just go to safer.me right there on the internet, and you'll be able to read up all about us. And obviously book a meeting with any of our team to discuss what it is that you might need with regard to pandemic readiness or predictive safety generally. That's our passion, something we've been working on for coming up to 10 years now. Final word of the day: better data makes for better decisions.
Good data makes for better decisions. Amen to that. So important. Thank you, Clint. This has been a pleasure. I encourage the audience to reach out, get connected, find out more about what Clint and his team can do for you at SaferMe. And as always, I hope everyone can stay healthy and safe, that you can find meaning and purpose at work each and every day. And I hope you all have a great week. Do you enjoy the Human Capital Innovations podcast? Enjoy ad-free listening by going to the Patreon page. And please consider contributing even at the producer or sponsorship level. And please leave a review. Thank you for your support. Thanks again for joining us for this episode of the Human Capital Innovations Podcast. I hope you stay healthy and safe and that you have a great week.